Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking you through 10 popular books that I think are worth the hype. And these are books that I think have received hype, whether they've had hype for a few years or whether they've recently received hype, and I think that they are worth it. I think that these books deserve all the hype that they're getting because they are amazing and are completely worth every bit of love that they've been getting on BookTube and across all reading platforms. So I think you'll be relieved to know that I think that The Way of Kings is worth the hype. I have just read this book and I think it's worth the hype. I think it did it. It was completely worth the hype that everyone gave to it. I was so nervous reading this because, you know, everyone's read it, everybody loves it. I don't really know that many people that don't love it. And I was like, what happens if I don't love The Way of Kings? Am I going to be cancelled? Like, what happens if you don't love this book? And thankfully, I loved it. I loved the whole thing. I mean, some people said that the first half is slow. I didn't even find that. I loved it the whole way through. And I should have expected this because I loved everything else that Mr. Brandon Sanderson has ever written. So why would I not love this? Actually, that's a lie. I haven't. I've been midway through Mistborn Era 2 for years and I haven't finished it. So I will try my best to finish that, but I absolutely loved this and I completely agree, everyone. You've hyped this up for exactly the right reasons. It is so worth the hype and I'm so excited to read the rest of the series, but this is so worth it. And why did I not read this sooner? But this is worth the hype. Okay, a really popular one, or really popular recently, that I think is worth the hype is A Court of Silver Flames, or like the whole of the ACOTAR series, everything written by Sarah J Maas. For me, it's worth the hype. She gets a lot of hype on BookTube. She also gets a lot of hate. She just gets a lot of people talking about her books. And I think that all of her books are worth the hype. I really enjoy them all. This new one included. This one isn't my personal favourite of her books, but I think that she deserves all the hype and all her books deserve hype because I love them all pretty much. That I loved the way she interweaves her fantasy plots with her romantic relationships and like the twists, and I really enjoy the way that she constructs her stories as a whole. So I think that Miss Sarah J Maas, I think she's worth the hype. She is worth the hype for me. She's very, very popular and very much worth all the hype that she gets, and I'm very happy. I started reading her books like before I knew BookTube was a thing, and I think before she got anywhere near as much hype as she gets now. So I think when I started reading her when Crown of Midnight had just been published, and I think she's very much worth the hype, and I'm very happy that she has been able to get so much of an audience from her books. I also think that The Poppy War by Ara Kuang is worth the hype. This got a lot of hype following the publication of the third book in the series, The Burning God, and I wasn't a massive fan of the conclusion of the series, but I feel as though this first book and the second book are definitely worth the hype, and that's very much a personal opinion on the third book. I don't know if there's that many of us that were disappointed in it. I feel as though the overriding opinion is that people really enjoyed the third book in the series, and there's just like me and Alan from the Library of Alexandria that are over here like in this disappointed like circle. There's all these cool kids over there that are on their like the Burning God table, like they're the really cool kids, and then there's me and Alan that are just over here like don't understand. We're the ones like they've been kicked out of the dining hall altogether because we don't understand the hype for it. But for both of us, we really, really enjoyed the first and second book, and these books are definitely worth the hype. Like this, I loved this book, the first one in particular, and I really liked the school setting, the magic, the way that the tonal shift in the middle of the book as war strikes. I think this is completely worth the hype. I really loved the Asian inspired setting and the way that this is inspired by real world events that happened, that the Poppy Wars were a thing, and that it got inspiration from the different wars that happened, and I really liked the interweaving of that into this fantasy plotline with the magic, with the characters. I think the characters, although not necessarily the most likeable, I think they had great depth to them, and they were very, very complex, and you could see how you could relate to them but also not relate, and so there was like this conflicting thoughts towards them, because you're like, I don't like you, but I also really like you. I don't know if I like you or not. So I think this is definitely worth the hype, and I'm very excited to see what Ara Kwang does in the future. I'm just very sad about my thoughts on the Burning God. Another Asian inspired story that I think is very much worth the hype is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I have only read this first book in the series, but I'm planning to get to Jade War I think around May. I am very sad, so sad, that Jade Legacy has been delayed from September to December. It just makes it seem so far away. Ugh. But I really loved reading Jade City, and the thing is, I was reading this, and this is like a mafia inspired story. Like, you've got family politics, and it's this Asian inspired city that is ruled by these two families that have dominance over the jade, which is what they use for power. And I really liked this, and the thing is, when I was reading it, I could not tell why I liked it. I was like, I don't know why I like this so much. Like, it's not, I wouldn't say this is particularly fast paced, and there's a lot of it that I was like, why do I like this? But I just couldn't put it down. I was like, I don't know why I like this, but I like this. So there was, I guess, some confusion in like internally, and I was like trying to process my thoughts of why I really liked this book. But I did. There's an event that happens like midway through the book which completely like shifts it, I'd say. And as soon as that bit happened, I was like, oh wow. And then I was like, well, what does this all mean? What does it mean? And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm very excited to get to the rest of the series, and I think that this is very much worth the hype. I mean, I love like magic and politics and families and like those sorts of relationships in books, so definitely worth the hype for me. A YA book that I think is worth the hype is Scythe by Neil Schusterman. So I read the series a couple of years ago now, and I really think it's worth the hype. But like, it is YA, but I'd say it's quite dark for a YA. Like, depending, if this was written slightly differently, this could have easily been adult. Like, it's set in a world where that we've reached like a utopian society where there is no death, there is no crime, people can't die, there's no wars, there's peace, and the only way that people die, and the only way that we control population growth is through these scythes, which go around killing people. That's their job, to maintain the population. And so sometimes some of the scythes go, oh okay, because back in the day how many percentage of people died each year in a car accident, I will kill that many people based on that. I mean, it's such a cool premise, and I think it's worth the hype. Like, I really enjoyed the whole series, the whole trilogy. I really enjoyed, and I liked this twist on the dystopian utopian society. But like, how do you give these people that much power? Like, how do you decide who becomes a scythe and who's got that power over the rest of the population? Because I wouldn't want to have that decision. I wouldn't want to be responsible for choosing who's going to die and who's going to live, having the capability to do that. So I think this is really worth the hype. Back to the fantasy romance, and this one has received a lot of hype recently, and I feel as though I might be responsible for some of it. Like, I've definitely hyped this book up, and that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and this book is so fun. So fun. I'll definitely say that if you have finished A Court of Silver Flames and you are feeling bereft of fantasy romance in your life, I would recommend reading From Blood and Ash, because it will definitely scratch that itch. It is so fun. And you're set in this world where you have Poppy and Hawk is Poppy's guard, and in this world there are different magical creatures. You have these people called the Ascended, and Poppy is brought up by these people. You also have the Craven, which is sort of seen as like rabid creatures that go around killing other people, and they have no control over them. There's a person in here who's seen as like the Dark Prince, the Dark One, and he is seen as evil by the Ascended. There are people you have to go through an ascension to become an Ascended, but you don't really know that much about that going in. And I mean, I loved it. I love the different like fantasy creatures that we got in here. I really enjoyed the world and the fantasy aspects of it, and I really liked the romance. And I would say that this is 50-50 between fantasy and romance. And this series brought me so much joy. It was so fun, and because of that, I think it's worth the hype. I think if you go in expecting like some epic story, you're not going to get it. But if you want fun, if you want like just to completely, a book that will completely make you forget about the world and like you won't be able to put it down, you're just going to be completely reading it from cover to cover like non-stop because you can't stop reading, then this would be the book for you. And so worth the hype, so fun, so deserves it, and I can't wait for book 3. I also think that The Midnight Library by Matt Haig is worth the hype. This won the Goodreads Choice Award for fiction last year, and it's so worth the hype. This book completely spoke to me emotionally. That it really spoke to me emotionally. It's a very touching book, and I would say that if you are triggered by the topic of suicide and depression, then you may struggle with this book, or you may need to just prepare yourself to go in the right headspace because of where this book starts. This book starts with our character Nora, who is very upset with her life. She is depressed and she is having suicidal thoughts, so much so that she attempts suicide and ends up in this place called the Midnight Library, where she is able to experience her life as though she had made different choices, and she's able to see them as though they're books on a shelf, and she's able to try them out and say, if I made this choice, what would my life be like, and what would it seem like? What would it be? If I had become an Olympic swimmer, what would my life look like? If I did this, what would it look like? And so it's really interesting seeing how it examines our regrets and how we can accept our decisions and how we move past them, and like how we accept ourselves and ourselves as people. So I'd say like the book overall has like this message of hope, and it's so emotional and so touching. But if you do struggle with depression, then you may struggle with this. But I think because of the messages and the way that Matt Haig wrote this, I know that he himself has struggled with depression and anxiety, and that this is very much an own voices for that representation, then I would strongly recommend reading this. And it really spoke to me. And I think a lot of people have said that it really can speak to you, and it's very short, but it really packs a punch. So I would say that this is definitely worth the hype. I also think that The Martian by Andy Weir is completely worth the hype. That book has got so much hype. I don't know if it's had that much hype like recently, but I mean, a lot of people read it like before the film came out. It has been read by hundreds of thousands of people, and I think The Martian is completely worth the hype. I think it is a very easy entry point into sci-fi. I haven't read that much sci-fi, but I feel as though it's very accessible for people, so much so that even my boyfriend has read it, and he doesn't really read that much. Andy Weir did such a good job of interweaving like the comedic aspects with the horribleness of the situation that this person is in, that he's been stranded on Mars and that he is alone there and he has to try and survive, and he has no ways of communicating with Earth or the people that are left in there by accident. And the way that the science is interwoven in with the comedic factor, I think it was a really easy read. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and you were on the edge of your seat thinking, is he going to survive? Is he going to make it? Like, how is this going to work out? And at the same time, I'm laughing at how funny he is as a character and how the science is interwoven in. Like, I think it is very much worth the hype, and a book that completely lives up to what everyone says. Another one that I think is worth the hype is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I think that's completely worth the hype. As someone that doesn't read that much of the romance genre, I think Beach Read completely lives up to the hype that it got last year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel as though it did such a good job of interweaving like romance and the romance plot, which is definitely at the forefront of the story, with serious topics and issues. And so the characters aren't just like, they're not just having a happy-go-lucky time, but it's following two authors that are having struggles with it. Like, they're both having writer's block, and so they switch genres to try and like stimulate their writing. And so for one of them, she is a romance writer, and the other one is a literary fiction writer, and so they swap genres, and they're going on like dates for her book and saying like, oh, if I was writing a story, I might go to the fair and like experience this, whereas he is writing about cults. And so they're going and experiencing very different research topics, and I really liked it. Like, I really liked the seriousness that is interwoven through the book and the serious topics that Emily Henry deals with, and then the like cute romance and the way that is juxtaposed together. So I think it is really worth the hype. I'm very much looking forward to her next book, and worth the hype. And then the final book that I think is worth the hype is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this came out last year and I loved it. I absolutely love this book so much. I think it is so worth the hype. I feel as though recently a few of my friends have not enjoyed this book and I'm very sad about it. I don't know if we can be friends anymore. Well, we can, but of course we can still be friends. But I'm just so sad that you didn't love this as much as me, because I love this so much and I wish that you loved it as much as I did. So I think this is really worth the hype. Again, this book is very emotional and it really struck a chord. Like The Midnight Library, it was very emotional, and I really liked the writing style, and yeah, the way that this was written just is beautiful. The amount of thought that Victoria Schwab put into the construction of the sentences and the way that it flowed throughout the story, I really liked. I didn't have this, but part of me wishes that I did, because of it being so well written. Like, the way that this was written just blew my mind. And then the story as a whole, like, I really enjoyed this story following Addie LaRue, who has made a deal with the darkness, which consequently means that she lives forever but is forgotten by everyone that she meets. And I just loved it. I really loved it. And for me, it's completely worth all the hype that it's received. It completely impacted me emotionally. I think I cried through like the last 50 pages or something, and then afterwards as well. It was just a very emotional read for me, and I'm absolutely gutted seeing people not like it. It really makes me sad, because I wish that you could have loved it as much as me and had the same emotional impact that it had on me. So for me, this book is completely worth the hype and deserves all the love that it's been getting. Whew. So those are 10 books that I think are really worth the hype that they've been getting. They're popular, and they're popular for a reason, and I am so happy that these books have got all the hype that they've been receiving. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in my future videos. Bye!